Hello and good afternoon, and welcome to our first class of economy for this GS3 mains module. I hope you can see and hear me. If you can see and hear me, please write yes in the chat and we'll get started. Hello, good afternoon, and welcome. Awesome. So before we start, I'd just like to show you a couple of things. So in your portal, in the internal security folder, so when you go to your portal, you will see folders like this. Here, when you go to internal security, the updated class has been uploaded and the updated document with all the current affairs is also uploaded. And you can just take a look at this. And इसके बाद we can have a doubt session a bit later. लेकिन जो means दे रहा है, they can stick to this. I'll make a short one more video. There's some current affairs that happened in August for that, and that is sorted. Now, the second thing is the one-pager notes. So your one-pager notes for internal security are done, agriculture are done, environment is done, environment is here, it's complete, as well as, sorry about that, as well as disaster management one-pager from where you can study is also done. Now, effectively, we are left with two things, economy and science and tech, and most of it will be done by this weekend. Now, which was the original date of completion of the GS3 mains module. Okay, now today what we have to study is economy. So before we start, we will do a previous year question analysis, and there are some important things that I have to tell you with regards to economy for mains. अभी तक किसी को कोई question, doubt, मजा आ रहा है, excited for economy? I hope you guys are, and then we'll get started. Yes, no, anything in the comments would be welcome. फिर मैं स्टार्ट करता हूँ. ठीक है, आज आपको एक और मेंटोस जिंदगी का एक्सपीरियंस देने का मौका मिलेगा मुझे, तो वो जरा देनी बहुत जरूरी है. सो इट्स गोइंग टू बी एंड टुवर्ड्स द एंड यू विल फील समथिंग that you will feel, and I'm sure अभी तक भी आपको रियलाइज हो गया होगा that the content that you are reading is not standard content. आज की क्लास इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ की बनाने के लिए एक 150 पेजेस का 3 सेट्स ऑफ रिसर्च पेपर्स जो नीति आयोग ने पब्लिश किए हैं, कॉल्ड द भारतीय मॉडल ऑफ इंक्लूसिव डेवलपमेंट, उससे हम एक समरी देखेंगे. और हम ये भी देखेंगे कि उससे आप ऑलमोस्ट जितने क्वेश्चंस यहाँ पे हैं सबके लिए आपको फॉर्डर मटेरियल मिलेगा. एंड गलती से अगर इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ पे क्वेश्चन आ गया, जो इस बार बहुत लाइकली है बिकॉज काफी टाइम से आया नहीं है, तो एंड इस बार के इकोनॉमिक सर्वे में भी उसमें बहुत ज्यादा बात है उस बारे में, तो यू विल हैव अ रियल कंपेरेटिव एडवांटेज ओवर योर कंपेटिटर्स. नाउ let us talk about the syllabus for economy and talk about some important things. देखो, सबसे पहले तो let me clear this for you that I am not going to teach you economy for prelims right now, है ना. ये prelims economy की क्लास नहीं है. We are going to learn perspectives, how to write an answer, and economy के answers लिखना is one of the most difficult parts in GS3, and वो आपको अभी समझ आएगा क्यों. So the fact of the matter is that economy is a subject जिसका syllabus अभी तक जो हमने subjects देखे हैं GS3 में, their syllabus has been fairly precise. Economy में problem क्या है कि economy के syllabus में there are 6 things that are written. इसमें 4 तो हैं fairly specific. वो 4 कौन सी हैं? One is inclusive growth, one is government budgeting, one is investment models, and the fourth one, वैसे आपको आइडली आपको बताना चाहिए मुझे, अभी तक सिलेबस आपको रट जाना चाहिए, but that's okay, I'll tell you, it's infrastructure and energy. ये तो हैं 4 स्पेसिफिक टॉपिक. इन पे जो क्वेश्चंस आते हैं, the questions that come on these 4 specific topics are not difficult to handle. These are questions that if we have read properly, it will not be a problem. But these are also questions where you can create the maximum differential, because most of the people are only writing from their prelims information. Now, maybe in yesterday's Write Smart, if you were there, I was telling this exact thing, that if I ask you right now a question on inclusive growth, you will still be able to write something. Inclusive growth means inclusive for all. Everyone is included. Sabka saath, sabka vikas is the motto of our honorable Prime Minister. So हम कुछ तो लिख ही लेंगे. So here the name of the game is to have competitive advantage. If we don't have competitive advantage, it's not going to work. The second, sorry about this. The second type of questions that are generally asked, just give me 1 second. The second type of questions that are generally asked are questions that are asked with respect to some broad topics. So syllabus में अगर मैं बात करूं तो ये specific topics थे हमारे 4: inclusive growth, government budgeting, investment models, and infrastructure and energy. But there are 2 broad topics. एक है planning, growth, mobilization of resources, and there are some other things also written here. And the second broad topic is impact of LPG, industrial policy, etc. Now, since technically in economy everything is mobilization of resources, and almost everything that is happening in the contemporary times can be put at some level or connected at some level to the LPG reforms of 1991, this makes it a fairly broad syllabus. तो हमें कुछ भी पूछा जा सकता है इन टॉपिक्स में. यहां पर टॉपिक्स फिक्स हैं, right? Because these are specific. So अब let us look at previous year questions, and now you will realize how important previous year questions are, especially when the syllabus is vague. So let us look at it. Up. Previous year questions में, see, this is the first topic. Indian economy, issues relating to planning, mobilization of resources, growth, development, employment. Now this effectively is almost everything. So they can ask us anything, but there are specific questions that are asked. तो अब उन questions को देखना start करते हैं. With a consideration towards the strategy of inclusive growth, the new companies bill that has introduced CSR and made it a mandatory obligation, challenges expected for implementation, discuss other provisions and their implications. Now, of course, this is a current affairs based question since the Companies Act came in 2013, but it's effectively asking us CSR for inclusive growth. अब ये चीज दिमाग में रखना कि they have asked, right? अगर possible है तो लिख लो जो बातें मैं बोल रहा हूं, for so that you can see the pattern. So they asked corporate social responsibility and inclusive growth, right? ठीक है, आगे देखते हैं. Capitalism has guided the world economy to unprecedented prosperity. However, it often encourages short-sightedness and contributes to wide disparities between the rich and the poor. In this light, would it be correct to believe and adopt capitalism driving inclusive growth in India? So, first question is that there are companies here who are effectively going to make profit because they are operating in the neoliberal global paradigm. A CSR provision, a corporate social responsibility provision, can it help in going for inclusive growth? First. Second question is also related. How is capitalism that has led the world to such inequalities going to lead to inclusive growth in India? Right? Next question. Third wala मैं अभी नहीं दिखा रहा हूं आपको. I'm just showing the questions of inclusive growth first. Then 2016 they asked, Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana is necessary for bringing the unbanked to institutional financial fold. Do you agree with this? For financial inclusion of the poor section of the Indian society, give arguments to justify. So now they have gone to one particular section of inclusive growth talking about financial inclusion. Then आगे देखते हैं. हम सारे questions देखेंगे, but first we'll look at the questions for inclusive growth. Or rather, if I have to show you the questions for inclusive growth, there is a better way. ये जो फर्स्ट क्लास का डॉक्यूमेंट है, इसमें शुरू में यू विल सी ओनली द क्वेश्चंस ऑफ इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ. ये क्वेश्चंस वो इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ पे पूछ चुके हैं, राइट? सो फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन, लाइक वी रेड, CSR leading to inclusive growth. So companies who are effectively wanting to make profits, will these companies go for inclusive growth in India, right? Then second question, capitalism has guided the world economy to unprecedented prosperity, but can it drive inclusive growth in India? So capitalism and inclusive growth. Then Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana in the context of financial inclusion. So one part of inclusive growth is also financial inclusion. So question on financial inclusion. Then challenges for inclusive growth, which include careless and useless manpower in the Indian context. Now, this exact question can possibly be asked as it is in GS2 if we focus on human resource management. So this is linked to GS2 in terms of human resource management. Again, a question on inclusive growth, two questions on inclusive growth in the same year, talking about how careless and useless manpower, so lack of human resource management, lack of skilling, lack of vocational training, lack of employability of the Indian youth is leading to wastage of our demographic dividend, and can this impact our inclusive growth? Then 2017 they made it further easy. Salient features of inclusive growth. Has India been experiencing such a growth process? Analyze and suggest measures for inclusive growth. Next, it is argued that the strategy for inclusive growth intended to meet the objectives of inclusiveness and sustainability together. So it is not merely inclusiveness, it is also sustainability. So both of these things together comment on this statement. Next, in 2020, they have asked, explain intra-generational and intergenerational issues of equity from the perspective of inclusive growth and sustainable development. So again, the idea of inclusive growth and sustainability linked together, and intra-generational and intergenerational equity. Then, is inclusive growth possible under market economy? इस टाइम तक यूपीएससी हो गया है बोर, because this is the exact same question as capitalism leading to inclusive growth. समझ आ रही है बात? हमने कैपिटलिस्ट सिस्टम अडॉप्ट कर लिया. कैपिटलिस्ट सिस्टम इज द मार्केट इकोनॉमी. कैन दैट मार्केट इकोनॉमी लीड टू इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ? सेम थिंग वाज आस्क्ड अगेन. सिग्निफिकेंस ऑफ फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन. फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन भी पहले पूछ चुके हैं, right? So nothing new has come in the last 2 years. When I teach you intragenerational and intergenerational equity, you will realize that if you have read salient features and strategy of inclusive growth, यहाँ पर sustainability और inclusiveness दोनों की बात हो गई, तो ये आंसर लिखा गया. When I teach you in this class only, you will realize कि ये बहुत ज़्यादा different question नहीं है. But the thing here is that आप लोगों में, and now you can answer me in the chat, I am sure all of you have read economy for prelims. How many of these questions do you think you can actually answer? आप ये बताइए. You have read economy for prelims. Do you think you can answer these questions? Maybe from a foundation course or wherever आपने prelims के लिए पढ़ा हो, कहीं पहले पढ़ा हो, किसी book से. Do you think there is an answer to this question in your knowledge arsenal? ठीक है, तुषार बोल रहा है yes. तो तुषार, write the answer to the 7th question. अगर आपको लग रहा है this is something that you can manage, please write the answer. Try and writing. मैं I'm not trying to insult you or anything. आप please ये आंसर लिखने की कोशिश करना. आप अभी सोच लो कि आप इसमें क्या लिखोगे, and then I'll show you. Or you can write this answer. Salient features या strategy for inclusive growth आप सोच सकते हो. ये fairly simpler. आप इसके बारे में सोचना अगर आपको लग रहा है कि आप लिख सकते हो तो, है ना? ये रिवाइज करके भी नहीं लिखा जाएगा यार. They are not asking schemes ना. This is the problem. So till date, as it existed during my time when I was giving my mains also, there is no one point solution फॉर इकोनॉमी मेंस, प्रीलिम्स के लिए हो सकता है ना, प्रीलिम्स के लिए हो सकता है प्रीलिम्स की बात करेंगे, बट मेंस के लिए टिल डेट देयर इज नो गुड सोर्स वेयर यू कैन से कि यहां पर आप पढ़ लो और मेंस का इकोनॉमी हो जाएगा। बट ऐसी प्रॉब्लम तो सिक्योरिटी में भी थी, बट अब नहीं है, तो ऐसी प्रॉब्लम अब बचेगी नहीं। सो नाउ आई जस्ट वांट टू शो यू, मैं पढ़ाऊंगा नहीं आपको डॉक्यूमेंट से, आई जस्ट वांट टू शो यू द डॉक्यूमेंट दैट आई हैव ड्राफ्टेड फॉर यू। इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ की इंट्रोडक्शन, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल प्रोविजंस, various indicators and India's performance and data, parameters of India's inclusive growth, उनकी description and उनका data, components of inclusive growth, salient features of inclusive growth, strategy of inclusive growth, need for inclusive growth, inclusive growth and inter and intra-generational equity or inclusiveness, challenges of inclusive growth, measures for inclusive growth that have been taken since independence in a timeline, then recent initiatives that have been taken for promoting inclusive growth in various sectors, financial inclusion, its status, digital payments, credit accessibility, insurance and pension, significance of financial inclusion, then PM Jan Dhan Yojana as a tool for inclusive growth, this since it is a previous year question, its challenges and limitations, inclusive growth and CSR since it's a previous year question, capitalism and neoliberal politics and the idea of LPG reforms in the context of inclusive growth, its positive and negative impacts, the way forward for inclusive growth, and we need inclusive growth. ये अभी नहीं बताना था, but ठीक है. What the World Economic Forum has said on inclusive growth, what Niti Aayog has said on inclusive growth, the conclusion, some best practices that are used internationally, some case studies of inclusive growth in India. और यहां तक अब आपको क्या लग रहा है कि आप लिख लोगे? नाउ अभी मैंने पढ़ाया नहीं है ऑब्वियसली, नाउ डू यू थिंक यू आर इन द पोजिशन टू राइट? अगर हम ये सब पढ़ लें, ये बताओ, करेक्ट, देयर हैज बीन एन एसे ऑन इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ आल्सो, अगर हम ये सब पढ़ लें तो इसके बाद कोई दिक्कत रहेगी? ठीक है, अब यहां तक तो है आम जिंदगी। अब बात करते हैं, ये है नीति आयोग का पॉलिसी पेपर, भारतीय मॉडल ऑफ इंक्लूसिव डेवलपमेंट, लिंकिंग द आइडिया ऑफ इंक्लूसिव डेवलपमेंट टू इंडियाज जीडीपी ग्रोथ, इंडियाज ट्रेड पॉलिसी, हाउ इंडिया नेगोशिएट्स इट्स फ्री ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट्स, हाउ इंडिया लुक्स बैक एट इट कल्चरल रूट्स, द आइडिया ऑफ अंत्योदय एंड इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ, idea of development and inclusive growth, pragmatism and inclusive growth, how we process macroeconomic indicators and have a flexible barbell approach of policy framing, and how that helps in our idea of inclusive development. This is also what we're going to study today. ठीक है, the three main pillars, market economics पे question था, तो what we have done for inclusive growth in terms of market economics, अंत्योदय एंड एम्पावरमेंट एंड होलिस्टिक अप्रोच, और फिर इसका एक्सप्लेनेशन एंड देन द वे अहेड. दिस इज इफेक्टिवली व्हाट वी आर गोइंग टू रीड टुडे. ठीक है, एक बार सिलेबस बस देख लेते हैं दोबारा से इकोनॉमी का, चाहे हम प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चंस टॉपिक बाय टॉपिक देख लेंगे. हमने इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ के सारे क्वेश्चंस देख लिए. वी विल नाउ लुक एट मियरली द सिलेबस पॉइंट्स. सो क्या क्या था यहां पे? planning, mobilization of resources, growth, development, employment, inclusive growth. ठीक है, अब government budgeting, specific topic, infrastructure, ports, roads, airports, railways and energy, एंड उसके साथ इन्वेस्टमेंट मॉडल्स, एंड लास्ट टॉपिक इफेक्ट्स ऑफ लिबरलाइजेशन ऑन द इकोनॉमी, चैलेंजेस इन changes in industrial policy and their effects on industrial growth. Right? Done? So, now let us start reading the topic of inclusive growth. इसको अब स्टार्ट करते हैं. देखो, इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ में हम पढ़ेंगे दो चीजें. पहली है बेसिक्स ऑफ इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ, where we focus only on the basic things, not that much in detail. We focus on the basics. उसके बाद हम पढ़ेंगे भारतीय मॉडल ऑफ इंक्लूसिव डेवलपमेंट एज सजेस्टेड बाय नीति आयोग. एंड ये जो मॉडल है, दिस विल नॉट ओनली बी द आंसर फॉर अ क्वेश्चन ऑन इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ. आगे चल के इट विल बी फॉर्डर मटीरियल. इट विल बी फॉर्डर मटीरियल फॉर एनीथिंग दैट यू हैव टू राइट on inclusive growth. ठीक है? As well as fodder material for anything that you have to write in the economy. अगर आप इकोनॉमी में प्लानिंग पे क्वेश्चन लिख रहे हो, या ग्रोथ पे क्वेश्चन लिख रहे हो, या मोबिलाइजेशन ऑफ रिसोर्सेज पे क्वेश्चन लिख रहे हो, in all of these you can use the fodder material that is being given in this part of the class. ठीक है? चलो स्टार्ट करते हैं. इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ में सबसे पहले वी आर गोइंग टू रीड दीज डायमेंशंस. सो वी आर गोइंग टू रीड फर्स्ट व्हाट इज इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ, देन वी आर गोइंग टू लुक सम स्टैट्स एंड सम वैल्यू एडिशन, देन व्हाट इज द नीड फॉर इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ, द स्ट्रैटेजी फॉर इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ, द कंपोनेंट्स ऑफ इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ, इंडिया's परफॉर्मेंस एंड इंडिया's schemes relative to inclusive growth, challenges of inclusive growth and the way forward. Along with this, we will combine the question of inter and intra-generational equity and the idea of CSR and inclusive growth. ये सारी चीजें हम अभी पढ़ने वाले हैं. All right, let's get started. तो अब आपका टाइम आ गया. You have 1 minute. Tell me what is inclusive growth. ये आपका काम है, फिर मैं आपको पढ़ाऊंगा. What is inclusive growth as per you? अरे मंथली मैगजीन्स छोटी चीज है, कुछ फायदा नहीं होता उससे. इस पे फोकस करो. व्हाट इज इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ? इस पे क्वेश्चन आना है मेंस में. ओके, ग्रोथ फॉर ऑल, गुड. equitable distribution of resources, very good. Okay, broadly correct. जो आप कह रहे हो है वही. Inclusive growth, and by the way you don't have to write any of this, everything is from the document only, कुछ बाहर से नहीं लिखा है. देखो, जब हम ग्रोथ कर रहे हैं, rather the word should be inclusive development, but okay, when India is growing, that means the prosperity of the country is rising. Prosperity of the country rising का क्या मतलब? That the country is becoming richer, it is having a greater GDP, its economy is growing, it has more products, more resources, etc. ये जो prosperity के benefits हैं, जो growth के साथ हमें मिलते हैं, the benefits of prosperity that accompany the Indian growth story must be equitably distributed among all. All what? All what? All people, all regions, all sectors of the economy. So all people, all regions, and all sectors of the economy must gain from the benefits of prosperity that accompany the Indian growth story. Correct? Then, how will this happen? This will happen firstly if everyone, or at least in terms of persons, it will happen that everyone has equal opportunity, which is, let's say, this something which is true for UPSC, right? हम UPSC के एग्जांपल से देखते हैं. everyone has equal opportunity in UPSC. You can fill the form and try your luck, right? This is equal opportunity. But there is a second component. If people are not empowered, if they are not empowered, this opportunity means nothing. जैसे मान लो मैं आपको ना पढ़ाऊं GS3 और आप पढ़ो ही ना GS3 and you have this opportunity but you've not read any of these topics ever, then that opportunity means nothing. So it is empowerment of the citizens and equality of opportunity for all. Equality of opportunity for all without any discrimination. ये तो बात हुई in terms of all persons having equitable opportunity and equitably distributing the benefits of prosperity amongst themselves. Second बात हुई that if it has to go to all regions and it has to go to all sectors, both the pace and the pattern of development must be correct. So the pace of development must be good and the pattern of development must be good. Good pattern of development means that all sectors and all regions of the country are getting equitably the benefits of the Indian growth story. So it means that the distribution of resources goes beyond some selected areas to everyone. Now this is connected to our GS1 syllabus of regionalism. So when we talk about balanced regional development, it is applicable in GS1 in regionalism. It is also applicable when it comes to inclusive growth. Now, to study inclusive growth, there are some constitutional provisions that our constitution has given with regards to inclusive growth. And now it is your job to tell me what are the various articles of the constitution that deal with the idea of inclusive growth. ये आपने मुझे बताना है. Article number and what it says. You have 1 minute. You can write in the chat. What are the various articles? Good. 46, 47, 39, 38, 41 also very good. Remember this. It is not only equality of opportunity. It is also empowerment. So यहां पर हमने बेनिफिट्स ऑफ प्रोस्पेरिटी इक्वल ही नहीं लिखा, हमने लिखा बेनिफिट्स ऑफ प्रोस्पेरिटी इक्विटेबली. है ना? नहीं, 15, 16 maybe you can say in terms of positive discrimination through reservation probably, but I was looking for directive principles of state policy. ठीक है? Anyway, so the constitutional articles that you can quote when you are writing any question on inclusive growth are as follows. So I'll just show you, and this is obviously directly from your document. You don't have to write or do anything. So Article 38. Article 38 for income and status inequalities. It talks about it directly. Then 39, and even in 39, Articles 39B and 39C. So it is actually Articles 39B and 39C that are the most important. Then 41. अब 41 को याद कैसे रखना है? 4 minus 1 equals to 3. So it gives 3 rights. What are those 3 rights? Right to work, right to education, and public assistance. So you are not only giving them an opportunity, you are also empowering them. So 41 ऐसे याद हो जाएगा. Then 46. 46 is educational and economic well-being of SC, ST and other weaker sections. Right? अगर ऐसे याद रखना हो तो 4 minus 6 mod कर लेना equals to 2, and 2 major communities it deals with is SCs and STs. Right? तो ये क्या कहता है? That scheduled tribes, scheduled caste की educational and economic well-being. Therefore, it is again an article focusing on inclusive growth. Article 47, public health, living standards. और अगर ये याद रखना हो कभी तो AK 47 can seriously damage your health. तो आप ऐसे याद रख सकते हो. So again, this focuses on health, which is a key component of inclusive development. So when we have to write about inclusive development, we will keep these articles in mind. Now there are certain indicators and certain data that we need to look at, right? These are the indicators that we can use, data that we can use when we are writing about inclusive growth. So the unemployment rate. If one person is employed and one person is unemployed, what does it mean? That the benefits of development have not been equitably distributed. So it is 7.6% in March 2024, and you can use this data. Then the women labor force participation rate is nearly 37%. For men, it is more than 57%, somewhere around 60, as far as I can recall. So this is another indicator that shows that India's inclusive growth journey is probably not that inclusive. Then literacy rate of 77%. This, I think, is something we really need to improve. It has been 78 years of independence. By now, we should have been a country that is 100% literate. Then financial inclusion, 60%. With climate change, we are on the 7th position in the Climate Change Performance Index of 2024. And who are 1, 2, and 3 in this? In case anybody can tell me. And then there is the idea of the Gini coefficient. ये मैं आपको explain करता हूँ. So पहले आप मुझे बताओ कि who are the 1, 2, and 3? Who are the 1, 2, and 3 as far as this? Very good. There is no country at the top 3 positions because they feel nowhere in the world is climate change action being performed properly. Now, what is the Gini coefficient? Gini coefficient says, इसका ग्राफ वैसे अगर जानना हो, although I will not explain the graph, फिल्म्स के लिए चाहिए होता है. This is the perfect equality line. This is the Lorentz curve. The Gini coefficient is basically a measurement of equitable distribution, or rather equal distribution of income. It is not a question of worth. Net worth की बात नहीं है, income की बात है, right? It is about how much income you have. So as far as income goes, if there is a country where all of the income is actually being earned by just one man, if let's say there is a country where all of the money, all of the income is coming to one man, the Gini coefficient value for that country will be 1. So Gini 1 represents perfect inequality. If Gini is 1, it means you are a perfectly unequal country. If Gini is 0, that means everyone has the same income. So if everyone has the same income, Gini coefficient becomes 0. If Gini coefficient is 1, it is perfect inequality. Perfect inequality means only one person has the entire income of that country. Now in this context, India's Gini coefficient number for 2022-23 is 0.4. And obviously we want this to get to as close to 0 as possible, right? So this is again something that you can quote here. Now, आगे चलते हैं. Now I want you to think about one question and I'll again give you 1 minute. थोड़ा सा सोचो फिर मैं बताता हूँ. What are the various components? थोड़ा तो आपको आइडिया हो ही रहा होगा इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ का. What are the various components of inclusive growth? क्या क्या components हैं inclusive growth के? ये आप सोचिए. If you had to write right now, what are the components of inclusive growth? Actually, you should brainstorm on this. This will help you. I'm giving you 3 minutes. चलो आराम से सोचो. Inclusion किस किस चीजों में हो सकती है? Write in your notebook, not in the chat. तनु, इसमें जो आपने लिखा है, इसमें रीजन वाइज इंक्लूजन कैसे हुआ? कुछ रह गया ना? इक्वल अपॉर्चुनिटी, इक्वल वेजेस से गवर्नेंस में इंक्लूजन कैसे होगा? ब्रॉड, थिंक ब्रॉड. फेयर इनफ दिव्या, गुड आंसर. ठीक है, तो अब लेट अस लुक एट द वेरियस कंपोनेंट्स ऑफ इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ. पहले हम ये कंपोनेंट्स देखते हैं, फिर इन कंपोनेंट्स के बाद हम इंडिया की परफॉर्मेंस देखेंगे. Components of inclusive growth are first, economic, it should be economically inclusive or economic inclusion. Economic inclusion का मतलब है job market, skill market, employment, poverty. In these components, growth needs to be inclusive, so there needs to be access for all. Second, socially it needs to be inclusive. So in terms of education, in terms of health, then institutionally growth needs to be inclusive. So the various governance and responsive institutions that we have, they need to be inclusive, and everyone should be allowed to participate in them, and everyone should be allowed to get a response from them. Then financially it has financial inclusion. Financial inclusion को मैं अलग से define करूंगा आपके लिए. Everyone gets access to financial services. Then technologically, you are addressing the digital divide and the access to digital services and digital public infrastructure. Digital public infrastructure includes things like Aadhaar, UPI, Umang. This access to DPI is for all. Then all genders, people of all ages, people who are physically abled or specially abled all get access to the benefits of development. Geographically, all regions develop equally. Then geographically, there is also one division of rural-urban divide. This rural-urban divide also needs to be solved if we need to have inclusive growth. And politically, all relevant stakeholders should get their voice in the political process. These are the components of inclusive growth, but still one component is left because none of these actually addresses the need of the next generation. Because whatever actions we are taking also has impacts on how the next generation will live. So one of the components of inclusive growth is also caring about the next generation. So environmental sustainability is also an idea of inclusive growth. Now environmental sustainability हमसे पूछा था, right? Now you look up previous year questions दिमाग में याद करो. Did they not ask us intergenerational and intragenerational equity? Did they not ask us growth and sustainability? So the idea of sustainable development, environmentally sustainable, fiscally sustainable, the idea of inclusive growth and sustainable development, caring about the environment go hand in hand. तो ये जो intergenerational equity की बात है वो यही है that the earth belongs to us as much as it did to our ancestors and as much as it did to our future generations. यहां पर ये आर्गुमेंट है. देख, अब जब हमने ये कंपोनेंट्स देख लिए, let us look at how India has so far performed on these components. What is India's performance on each of these components and their parameters, and we will use data again to see where we have reached. So once we are evaluating India's performance, again I am just taking you back to your document, and here you will see various indicators on which we can judge India's performance. So we can judge our performance as far as the idea of economic growth is concerned, poverty reduction is concerned, human development is concerned. Just one second. Yeah. Gender inclusion is concerned, agricultural development is concerned, educational access, healthcare accessibility, employment opportunities, social protection. So ये जो सारे यहाँ पर components हैं, urban and rural development, environmental sustainability, technological advancement and cultural diversity. These parameters can then be fit into the broad idea of the components that we have read. For example, economic growth, poverty reduction and human development go to economic. Gender inclusion goes to social inclusion. Education access, healthcare access goes to social inclusion. Agricultural development goes to economic inclusion. Employment goes to economic. Social protection goes to social. Urban rural goes to regional. Environmental goes to the idea of intergenerational equity. Technological goes to technological inclusion, digital inclusion. So these are the parameters, and here there are some schemes, one or two schemes for each. जैसे urban development में smart cities mission, rural development में प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क योजना. And ये मैंने यहाँ पे इसलिए लिखा है, these schemes are not things, or this data is not things that you will not find elsewhere. But आपके पास एक ready repository होनी चाहिए. जब आप inclusive growth सोचो, जैसे ही आप education access सोचो, तो you think about the enrollment rate in primary education, or you think about the new education policy, because any scheme that the government comes up with will obviously have inclusive growth as one of its key components, right? So as soon as you think of the idea of inclusive growth, these parameters need to come to your mind, and in parameters से one or two schemes need to come to your mind. ठीक है, आगे चलते हैं. Now, getting back to where we started. These are the components of inclusive. इसमें नेक्स्ट जनरेशन की नीड्स भी हैं और इंडिया की परफॉर्मेंस हमने देख ली. We can have data for that and we have seen the parameters also. Now, why is inclusive growth needed? Actually, I should not show you this पहले. You need to think what is the need of inclusive growth. Why do I need to have inclusive growth? क्या फायदा हो जाएगा मुझे inclusive growth करके? You have 3 minutes. Or rather you have 2 minutes. This is not that difficult. You should be able to think fairly quickly. बताओ, नीड. ये सबका साथ सबका विकास is a slogan. It is not the need. It is the method of inclusive growth that our honorable Prime Minister has adopted. But it is not the answer. चलो, थोड़े से पॉइंट्स अब जनरेट होना शुरू हो रहे हैं, मतलब दिमाग चल रहा है. गुड. गुड रवि. आप याद करो, इन्हीं पॉइंट्स में आपके सामने लिखा हुआ है, क्या इंडिया में हेल्थ केयर सबको अवेलेबल है? क्या इंडिया में एजुकेशन, क्वालिटी एजुकेशन, इज इट अवेलेबल टू ऑल इन इंडिया? अगर नहीं है, then where do we solve this problem? We solve it through inclusive growth. So when I have to study the need for inclusive growth, I will study in these terms. For example, I need inclusive growth because the access to public services is not inclusive. In terms of health, our expenditure on health was merely 2.1% of our budget, which is abysmal. Our expenditure on education is supposed to be 6% of our GDP. 2.1% of GDP, sorry, not 2.1% of budget, 2.1% of GDP. Education, we are supposed to spend 6% of GDP. We are spending close to 3% of GDP, right? So the expenditure here is not good enough. So because the expenditure here is not good enough, not everyone is getting accessible health, accessible education. Then let us look at the status of our nutrition and health. We have stunting in this country, wasting we have, and underweights we have. This we can quote the data from NFHS, and this is written in your document, right? Fairly high numbers. That means we don't have proper nutritional development for all. So there is a need for inclusive growth. Economic and social inequality is there. आप में से किसी ने भी यहाँ पर गिनी कोएफिशिएंट का नाम नहीं लिया. There is economic and social inequality. Gini coefficient is fairly high. Top 10% of India's population hold approximately 77% of its wealth. Okay, this is a huge income divide, huge. Then we have to talk about interstate inequality. The gross state domestic product per capita of Goa is close to rupees 4 lakhs, and for Bihar is around 47,000. Again, this is given in your document, you don't need to write down. So GSDP per capita and of Goa and Bihar, look at this inter-regional disparity. This is why we need inclusive growth. Employment and agriculture. Agriculture as a sector has how much percent of the population and how much percent of employment? How much percentage of the population and how much percentage of the GDP? ये तो आपको पता है. So about 18% of the population, 15 to 18%, and 18% of the GDP, 45% of the population. So the problem is, और ये हम पढ़ चुके हैं डिटेल में, agrarian distress हम पढ़ चुके हैं. The agrarian distress, the sectoral distress is also why there is a need for inclusive growth. There is a rural urban divide. अगर हम नेशनल मल्टी डायमेंशनल पॉवर्टी इंडेक्स देखेंगे नीति आयोग का, और हम देखेंगे इसको डिटेल में, नेशनल मल्टी डायमेंशनल पॉवर्टी इंडेक्स में जो अर्बन पॉवर्टी है दैट हैज रिड्यूस्ड मच क्विकर एज कंपेयर टू रूरल पॉवर्टी. इवन इन टेक्नोलॉजी देयर इज अ डिवाइड. देन देयर इज अ जेंडर डिवाइड. इन द ग्लोबल जेंडर इनइक्वालिटी इंडेक्स, our rank is 108 out of 193. In global hunger index also our rank is not that good, although we should not take the rankings of these global indices to heart, right, because their methodology is usually flawed when it comes to India, but still it is indicative of a larger problem, right? Then one other need is sustainable development. Still most of our energy is coming from coal-based power plants. So the idea of intergenerational equity is something we are compromising on. Then we need to invest in the idea of skilling. Currently, India faces an employability crisis, and especially in the times of AI, we are facing an employability crisis. So this needs to be solved, and this is why there is a grand need for inclusive growth. And that's what I'm telling you. The index की methodology can be flawed, but can anyone deny that women in India need empowerment and they are currently not getting the benefits of development as much as men are getting? Therefore, there is need for inclusive growth. And इसके beyond जाके, let me ask you, are transgender people in our country getting the benefits of development as much as men are getting? Of course, they are not. So there is need for empowerment for transgenders and need for empowerment of women. Index can be wrong, but it is indicative of a larger problem, na? Then, next question, again to you. What are the salient features, as per you, what are the salient features of inclusive growth? ये बताओ इस बार. इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ के फीचर्स क्या होंगे? हमें समझ आ गया कि व्हाट इज इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ, व्हाट इज इंडिया डूइंग, व्हाट इज द नीड, राइट? देन वी हैव अंडरस्टूड द पैरामीटर्स, द कंपोनेंट्स. नाउ यू टेल मी व्हाट विल बी द सेलिएंट फीचर्स ऑफ सच इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ. क्या करें हम कि ग्रोथ ऐसे इंक्लूसिव हो जाए? Access to resources, equitable distribution, sustainable development. Manmeet, it really depends on the index, and it's better to quote from Indian indices. So we have the economic survey, we have India's own data, तो हम उसी से quote कर लेते हैं. जिसको ऐसे डेटा को जिसको हमारी पॉलिटिकल एस्टैब्लिशमेंट ने कहा हुआ है कि नहीं ये ठीक नहीं है, उसके अगेंस्ट जनरली जाना इज नॉट अ गुड आइडिया. Sustainable development, financial inclusion, reduce regional disparity, development up to the last person, social inclusion, increasing financial inclusion. यार एक बात बताओ, ये क्वेश्चन सिर्फ और सिर्फ आपको टेस्ट करने के लिए था. यही कंपोनेंट्स हैं, तो सेलिएंट फीचर्स में भी तो यही एड्रेस करना है. If these are the components, I have to address these things only. इसमें सोच क्यों रहे हो? But anyway, अगर हमें फिर भी लिखना हो, लिखने को कभी आ जाए, तो हमारे पास पॉइंट्स होने चाहिए. So, equal opportunities for all. reduction of poverty, focusing on sustainable development, comprehensive employment programs, social inclusion, regional balance, participation and empowerment, access to services and good governance. अब अगर आप देखो ये उन्हीं कंपोनेंट से लिखा हुआ है. Equal opportunity is economic inclusion, poverty reduction is economic inclusion, sustainable is environmental, employment is again economic, then social inclusion is social inclusion, regional is geographical inclusion, participation and empowerment of all is governance based inclusion, or political inclusion. This is governance based inclusion, है ना? So all of this again fits into the idea of the same components. एंड शायद आपको एक बात रियलाइज नहीं हुई, ये एग्जैक्ट प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चन था. एंड जस्ट 1 hour अगो यू वर थिंकिंग कि आपसे नहीं लिखा जाएगा. सो इफ यू आर एबल टू ब्रेनस्टॉर्म दिस, यू हैव रिटन एटलीस्ट 1 प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चन. इसलिए मैं कह रहा था सिक्योरिटी में टाइम लगाने का पॉइंट था. ये इंफॉर्मेशन मैनेजमेंट है. आई हैव एक्चुअली नॉट टॉट यू एनीथिंग न्यू टिल नाउ. ऐसी कौन सी बात मैंने आपको बता दी जो आपने पहले सुनी ना हो? ऐसा होगा ही नहीं कुछ. इट इज इंफॉर्मेशन मैनेजमेंट. जहां कुछ नया आएगा मैं आपको बता दूंगा. इट इज जस्ट हैविंग अ स्ट्रक्चर इन योर हेड सो दैट इफ अ क्वेश्चन कम्स आई हैव द सेम इंफॉर्मेशन, आई जस्ट मैनेज इट बेटर. है ना? बस इतनी सी कहानी है. दैट्स ऑल इट इज. ठीक है, आगे देखते हैं. नाउ चलो ये मैं आपको दिखा देता हूं एंड देखते हैं आप एक बात नोटिस कर पाते हो या नहीं. दीज आर द चैलेंजेस ऑफ इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ. ठीक है, चैलेंजेस ऑफ इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ की बात हो रही है. अब एक नहीं, मेंटोस तो अभी तो शुरू नहीं हुआ, अभी तक तो आम ही चल रहा है, बट ये थोड़ा सा मेंटोस है स्लाइटली. चैलेंजेस देखते हैं. व्हाट आर द चैलेंजेस दैट इंडिया हैज फेस्ड विद रिगार्ड्स टू इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ? लेट्स सी. Historically in our country there has been discrimination against certain groups. This prevents them getting equal opportunities even after reservation policies have been enacted. Till date, more than 90% of Safai Karamcharis in India are coming from one community. So that historical discrimination still exists. Then the geographical inequality is there. The gross state value addition of Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu is much more when compared with Bihar and UP. So there is this problem, right? Then social exclusion is there. How? Female labor force participation rate is low. Transgenders, if you talk about, 92% of them are not getting opportunities of work or formal work. Safai Karamcharis, like I have said, are coming from one community. Governance issues, right? 93 out of 180 in the corruption perception index. Now again, this index you should not quote, right? Because the government says this index doesn't matter, but it is indicative of a larger problem, right? Corruption does exist in India even today, right? चलो, सबसे पहले किसने बोला? अमित. Good job. Governance में there are challenges with regards to corruption. Then in poverty there are issues of national multidimensional poverty index, and I've written additional here because we are going to read about MPI in detail. Then hunger, we are 111 out of 125 in global hunger index. We will not believe the index. If our government says the approach is flawed, it's probably flawed. But we have stunting, we have wasting, we have underweight people, and this is mentioned in our own national family health survey. तो जो आपका डाउट था आपने कोट करना है तो आप NFHS से कोट करो. गवर्नमेंट विल नेवर रिजेक्ट द NFHS ना, इट इज इटसेल्फ कंडक्टिंग इट. बट ये बात ट्रू तो है. देन ऐसे इंडेक्सेस कंट्रोवर्सी में आते हैं तो हमें याद रहते हैं. तो ग्लोबल हंगर इंडेक्स याद करो, डेटा NFHS का लिखो. देन देयर आर प्रॉब्लम्स ऑफ ह्यूमन रिसोर्स मैनेजमेंट, skilling issues, vocational training, unemployment, health issues. We are currently the diabetes capital of the world, soon to become the cancer capital of the world also. So this is a problem. Then unemployment is a huge issue. 83% of people who are unemployed are from the youth. So that means young people are not getting employment. Then income inequality. करप्शन में डेटा कोड करने की जरूरत नहीं है, इट्स ओके, क्वांटिफाई करने की जरूरत नहीं है, एवरीबडी नोज. इनकम इनक्वालिटी की प्रॉब्लम है, हियर यू कोट द ऑक्सफैम रिपोर्ट और यू कोट द जिनी कोएफिशिएंट. देन और क्या क्या चैलेंजेस हैं इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ में? एग्रीकल्चर पे ओवर डिपेंडेंस है, 15 to 18% of GDP, 45% employment. We are having jobless growth. Our GDP is growing by 7%, but our employment is growing by merely 1%. And climate change, there is disproportionate impact to vulnerable communities. If a heat wave is happening, and ये मैंने पढ़ाया है आपको, if a heat wave is happening and if you are living in a slum area, you are much more likely to get impacted. So they need empowerment, and this is why India is facing a challenge as far as inclusive growth is concerned. अब मुझे एक बात बताओ, आपको यहाँ पे कोई पैटर्न नोटिस हुआ? मोस्ट लोगों को हो गया, एक्चुअली 2 ही लोगों को हुआ, बट डिड यू अंडरस्टैंड द पैटर्न एज टू द चैलेंजेस दैट आई वाज राइटिंग? बताओ, डिड यू नोटिस अ पैटर्न? गुड. दिस इज नथिंग बट द जीएस पेपर वाइज अप्रोच. मैंने जीएस पेपर्स के हिसाब से लिख तो दिया पूरा आंसर, आपको पता ही नहीं चला शायद, है ना? और अगर पता चल गया तो ऐसे ही लिखा जाता है, ये देखो, GS1, 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 GS2, 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 GS3, GS3. देख रहे हो, सिलेबस से पॉइंट जनरेट किए और सिर्फ डेटा ऐड कर दिया है, GS3, GS3, GS3. सिर्फ सिलेबस से पॉइंट जनरेट किए और डेटा ऐड कर दिया. दिस इज हाउ यू यूज अप्रोचेस व्हेन यू आर एक्चुअली राइटिंग आंसर्स. ये बात समझ आई? तो हमने अभी तक क्या देखा? हमने फर्स्ट स्लाइड पे जाते हैं, कहां से स्टार्ट किया था हमने? हमें समझ आ गया कि व्हाट इज इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ, ये बात हमने देख ली. स्टैटिस्टिक्स एंड वैल्यू एडिशन वाला काम हमने कर लिया. नीड फॉर इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ हमने समझ ली. स्ट्रैटेजी फॉर इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ हम अभी समझेंगे थोड़े डिटेल में. कंपोनेंट्स देख लिए हमने, यहां से हमने इंडिया परफॉर्मेंस देख ली और चैलेंजेस देख लिए, राइट? ये हमने सब देख लिया इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ के लिए. अभी तक भी आई हैव नॉट टोल्ड यू एनीथिंग न्यू. अभी तक सिर्फ इंफॉर्मेशन मैनेजमेंट चल रही है. आगे देखते हैं. चलो अब देखते हैं गवर्नमेंट स्कीम्स, और ये भी आप ही बताओगे. मेजर्स टेकन फॉर इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ, you have to tell me the measures since independence. What have we done? And timeline में जाना. So start from 1950s and go up to 2018. Recent initiatives नहीं चाहिए. Recent initiatives हम अलग से देखेंगे सेक्टर वाइज, ठीक है? 1950s से 2018 तक what are the measures that we have? Very good, Tripti. This was exactly what I was looking for. किसी आपके दिमाग में लैंड रिफॉर्म्स आया मतलब आपने एग्रीकल्चर पढ़ लिया. और बताओ, लैंड रिफॉर्म्स इज वन, व्हाट एल्स? व्हाट एल्स? सब पढ़ा चुके, सब ऑलमोस्ट सब आपको पता है, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है जो आपको ना पता हो. PDS वेरी गुड, 5 ईयर प्लान वेरी गुड. नेशनलाइजेशन ऑफ बैंक्स वेरी गुड. हमने पढ़ा था ना एग्रीकल्चरल क्रेडिट में, ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन की प्रॉब्लम्स में क्रेडिट देना था, तो वी नेशनलाइज द बैंक्स, राइट? वी रेड दिस, सेम थिंग. Yes, reservation policies also, they are a feature of inclusive growth. Midday meal scheme, right to education act, political decentralization, beautiful point. The idea of political decentralization, the idea of 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act is also the idea of inclusive growth, so that everyone should get included in the political process. Midday meal scheme, very good. अरे एक तो हमने प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चन देखा, जनधन तो बोलो. जनधन योजना 2014 में आई थी, जनधन योजना 2018 तक का टाइम है आपके पास। नेशनल सोशल असिस्टेंस प्रोग्राम, वेरी गुड। प्रधानमंत्री आवास योजना, टू गेट एवरीवन अ हाउस। डिजिटल इंडिया प्रोग्राम, वो हमने देखा है अर्बन में लिखा हुआ। देन इवन मेक इन इंडिया प्रोग्राम। मेक इन इंडिया क्या इंश्योर कर रहा है कि मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टर में ग्रोथ हो और लो स्किल्ड वर्कर्स गेट जॉब्स, जो इंडिया में सबसे मुश्किल काम है, राइट? तो ये भी इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ के लिए। अब आपसे एक और क्वेश्चन पूछता हूं, चलो इसके बाद पूछूंगा। अब कुछ आप सेक्टर वाइज रीसेंट इनिशिएटिव्स बता दो। मैं सेक्टर बोलूंगा, आप दो तीन स्कीम्स बोलोगे। सबसे पहले बताओ, एग्रीकल्चर में व्हाट हैव वी डन फॉर इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ? एग्रीकल्चर में इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ का सोचो, हमने क्या क्या किया रीसेंट इनिशिएटिव? रीसेंट पीएम किसान फसल बीमा योजना। रीसेंट मतलब 4-5 साल पुराने भी चलेंगे, इतने भी रीसेंट नहीं। जैसे मैं कहूं आई रिसेंटली स्टार्टेड प्रिपेयरिंग फॉर यूपीएससी, वैसा रीसेंट। ठीक है, वेरी गुड। अब हेल्थ केयर का बता दो। हेल्थ में हमने क्या किया आफ्टर 2018 फॉर इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ? आयुष्मान भारत और नेशनल हेल्थ पॉलिसी आई थी 2017 में, नेशनल हेल्थ मिशन चल रहा है, नेशनल प्रोग्राम फॉर टीबी एलिमिनेशन है इंडिया में, जन आरोग्य योजना, वेरी गुड। जन औषधि भी बता दो फिर, वेरी गुड। ठीक है, एजुकेशन के लिए क्या किया हमने इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ के लिए रिसेंटली? व्हाट डिड वी डू? मिशन इंद्रधनुष, डोंट राइट इम्यूनाइजेशन, राइट मिशन इंद्रधनुष। एनईपी, एकलव्य मॉडल रेजिडेंशियल स्कूल, वेरी गुड। कुछ डिजिटल भी बता दो, ई विद्या, ऐसा कुछ याद आ रहा है? दीक्षा, ग्रामीण दीक्षा, स्वयं पोर्टल, पीएम पोषण, वेरी गुड। ऑल्दो वो न्यूट्रिशन में लिख लेते, बट ठीक है। वेरी गुड, ठीक है। आ जाओ, स्किल डेवलपमेंट के लिए क्या किया है? व्हाट हैव वी डन फॉर स्किल डेवलपमेंट? बेस्ट टॉपिक है इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ पढ़ाने के लिए। मैंने कुछ पढ़ाना ही नहीं है, सिर्फ आपका दिमाग चलवाना है। व्हाट हैव वी डन फॉर स्किल डेवलपमेंट, बताओ। वेरी गुड, कौशल विकास योजना, स्किल इंडिया मिशन, नेशनल करियर सर्विस भी याद कर सकते हो आप। ठीक है, कुछ डिजिटल इनिशिएटिव्स जो इंडिया ने लिए हों फॉर इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ, वो बता दो। अटल टिंकरिंग लैब्स ना इनोवेशन में लिखेंगे। वेरी गुड, यूनिफाइड मोबाइल ऐप फॉर न्यू एज गवर्नेंस। अभी तो हमने बात की थी आवर डिजिटल पब्लिक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर। आप सोचो, व्हेन द वर्ल्ड वाज कैरिंग वैक्सीन सर्टिफिकेट्स इन देयर बैक पॉकेट्स, वी हैड इट इन आवर फोन्स। इन डिजिटल पब्लिक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर वी आर द वर्ल्ड्स लीडर्स। यूपीआई पे दिन के 4 बिलियन ट्रांजैक्शन हो रहे हैं, दिन के, एंड चल रहा है सर्वर। अब इमेजिन करो, ओपन नेटवर्क फॉर डिजिटल कॉमर्स, यूपीआई, उमंग, आधार, कोविन, आरोग्य सेतु, देयर इज नो लिमिट टू हाउ इंडिया इज लीडिंग द वर्ल्ड इन डिजिटल पब्लिक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर। डिजी लॉकर, वेरी गुड। आगे देखते हैं। अब फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन के लिए बता दो 6। फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन के लिए हमने क्या किया है? जनधन योजना, मुद्रा योजना, वेरी गुड। नहीं, एमएसएमई मत लिखो, फिर लिखो एमएसएमई क्रेडिट लाइन गारंटी स्कीम, और वो फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन के लिए नहीं है, वो सेक्टोरल डेवलपमेंट के लिए है। डीबीटी लिखो, यूपीआई 1 2 3 लिखो, दीज आर वेरी गुड आंसर्स। ठीक है, चलो अब अर्बन डेवलपमेंट। अर्बन डेवलपमेंट के लिए हमने क्या किया? अमृत मिशन, वेरी गुड याशिका, पढ़ के आने लग गई है याशिका, दैट्स गुड, नाइस। अटल मिशन फॉर रिजुविनेशन एंड अर्बन ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन, स्मार्ट सिटीज मिशन, हृदय स्कीम, वेरी गुड, वो कल्चर में भी लिख सकते थे वैसे। ठीक है, फिर एनर्जी एंड एनवायरमेंट, व्हाट आर वी डूइंग? ये अगर नहीं बताया ना किसी ने, फिर देखना तुम। ये बताओ अब एनवायरमेंट के लिए व्हाट आर वी डूइंग फॉर सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट? उज्ज्वला, एक सुनना चाहता हूं बस मैं, ग्रीन एनर्जी, आईएसए, बायोफ्यूल्स। एक टॉपिक पढ़ाने में आपको इतना टाइम लगाया मैंने, क्योंकि इस बार वो आने वाला है, अभी तक नहीं दिखा मुझे। थैंक यू कावेरी। लाइफस्टाइल फॉर एनवायरमेंट, प्रो प्लैनेट पीपल, द वेस्टर्न अप्रोच इज फ्लॉड, it ignores historical data, they're self-serving, will not change their own lifestyle, looks at the problem through a narrow lens, does not recognize the interconnected nature of existence। ये सारी चीजें हमने पढ़ी थी ना उस दिन, लाइफस्टाइल ऑफ एनवायरनमेंट का लॉजिक, एंड फिर प्रो प्लैनेट पीपल, कलेक्टिव एक्शन। भूल जाते हो यार। डन। अब भी कुछ नया नहीं बताया आपको, सिर्फ इंफॉर्मेशन मैनेजमेंट चल रही है, इट इज ओनली इंफॉर्मेशन मैनेजमेंट, बस ऑर्गेनाइज करवा रहा हूं, नया तो अभी बताऊंगा। आगे चलते हैं, मेजर्स तो आपने ही बता दिए, लेट्स सी। अब ये मेरे को आपको बताना पड़ेगा, बिकॉज ये आपको शायद नहीं आता होगा। देयर आर सम कॉर्पोरेट सोशल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी मेजर्स दैट हैव बीन टेकन बाय वेरियस कंपनीज, सीएसआर के एग्जांपल्स देख रहे हैं हम, विच हैव हेल्प्ड इन इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ। अब ये हमें याद करना है। सोशल इनइक्वालिटीज को एड्रेस करने के लिए टाटा का ओखाई इनिशिएटिव है, रिलायंस इज डूइंग वर्क हियर, एजुकेशन एंड स्किल डेवलपमेंट में इन्फोसिस एंड लार्सन एंड टर्बो हैव वर्कड। अब ये चीजें वो हैं कि इनका पूरा डिस्क्रिप्शन, द एंटायर डिस्क्रिप्शन ऑफ व्हाट द ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस आर डूइंग इज रिटन इन योर डॉक्यूमेंट, एंड आई अज्यूम दिस मच यू कैन रीड, इट्स नॉट अ प्रॉब्लम। Empowerment of women, Unilever has a Shakti program, PepsiCo has various programs. Then in environmental sustainability, ITC has watershed development program, Wipro has a program, and rural development, Mahindra has a Haryali program where they adopt a village and go for greenery, and Aditya Birla Group focuses on rural healthcare. And when you go to your document, you will see that all of these initiatives have been talked about in fair amount of detail. Once we start reading, हमने components पढ़ लिए, salient features पढ़ लिए, need for inclusive growth पढ़ लिया, इंटरजेनरेशनल इक्विटी हम अभी पढ़ेंगे, कॉर्पोरेट सोशल, ये इनिशिएटिव्स भी आपने ऑलमोस्ट सारे ही बता दिए जितने मैंने लिखे थे। कुडोस टू यू बाय द वे, ऑलमोस्ट ऑल ऑफ देम यू हैव नेम्ड। फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन बाद में देखेंगे, आपको सीएसआर दिखाता हूं मैं पहले। तो सीएसआर में टाटा केमिकल्स क्या कर रहा है, रिलायंस क्या कर रहा है, इन्फोसिस, लार्सन एंड टर्बो, हिंदुस्तान यूनिलीवर, पेप्सिको, आईटीसी लिमिटेड, विप्रो, महिंद्रा, आदित्य बिरला ग्रुप। आई हैव गिवन यू 10 एग्जांपल्स ऑफ सीएसआर। यू रिमेंबर एनी 5, it will be good enough. For any question on inclusive growth, if ever the question gets repeated, you have 10 wonderful examples that most people will not have. ठीक है, तो ये प्रॉब्लम भी खत्म हो गई हमारी। अब आगे देखते हैं। अब ये है एक इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन, एंड दिस वी नीड टू एड्रेस। Although इफेक्ट्स ऑफ लिबरलाइजेशन ऑफ द इकोनॉमी में भी हम ये चीज देखेंगे, बट ये थोड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट है. The idea of LPG reforms and the neoliberal economic paradigm. What is the neoliberal economic paradigm? The idea of laissez-faire, of reducing taxes, of allowing to grow, right? अरे बिप्लब, दिस डजंट मैटर, हमें सिर्फ एग्जांपल्स याद करने हैं. तो the idea of more and more production, this is the neoliberal economic paradigm, right? Capitalist production and a global economic order for the same. Liberalize the economy, privatize the sectors, and globalize the production and consumption. This is the idea of the neoliberal economic paradigm. Now, has it helped in inclusive growth is the question. Yes, it has helped in some areas. How? It has helped in terms of economics. It has increased the GDP, increased foreign direct investment. Both of these had an impact on job creation and poverty reduction. And since jobs have been created and poverty has been reduced in India because of this foreign direct investment, the LPG reforms, certainly it has a role in inclusive growth. But this is not the only thing where it has contributed. It has led India to do infrastructural development. Now, infrastructural development, we have infrastructure mein dekhenge. Infrastructural development is one of the best things we can do for inclusive growth. Why? Because infrastructure has a multiplier effect, and you have to write this keyword whenever there's a question on infrastructure, and I'll teach you this keyword in detail when we talk about infrastructure. So in terms of infrastructural development, the infrastructure has a multiplier effect on the economy. So if you spend on capital account, if you do capital expenditure on infrastructure growth, you will see it impacting all sectors, because roads are used by all sectors of the economy and all people. So there is nothing as inclusive as public goods and infrastructure is. Then it is because of the phenomena of globalization that there has been a global focus on environment, and at least there is a global idea of containing climate change in the world. Otherwise, maybe this idea would not have existed in the first place. And then there has been the withdrawal of the state. This topic, just keep in mind when we look at Bharatiya model of inclusive development, tab hum isko dekhenge. But liberalization, privatization, globalization, and the neoliberal paradigm have also negatively impacted the idea of inclusive growth. How? There is income inequality. There are regional disparities. The labor market has gotten precarious, and there is a gender divide. So, labor market में हो क्या रहा है अगर आप अभी देखो, people who are highly skilled, people who are highly educated are likely to get better and better jobs, especially with the advent of AI. But people who are not that skilled are very likely to lose their jobs, and that will impact the nature of employment. जब हम employment देखेंगे तो industry 4.0 and employment का relation जरूर देखेंगे, right? World Economic Forum also has a report on it. So they are causing a distortion of the labor market. And lastly, there are environmental concerns because overconsumption. ये हमने देखा था lifestyle for environment जब पढ़ रहे थे. Because this is overconsumption. There is no supply side management, right? Demand management करते ही नहीं. We keep consuming more and more. This has come from the basic idea of the neoliberal paradigm. इसको हम थोड़ा भी और डिटेल में देखेंगे when we look at the Bharatiya model of inclusive development. Then, अब ये क्वेश्चन आपको मुझे बताना है. If I look at inclusive growth from the perspective of intra-generational equity, intra-generational तो मैं देख चुका. I have seen intra-generational equity already, right? All of the things that we have been reading so far are related to, almost all of them are related to intra-generational equity. But if I look at inclusive growth from the perspective of intergenerational equity, if this is now how I have to look at the perspective of intergenerational equity with reference to inclusive growth, what points are coming to your mind? That is the question. एक एनवायरमेंट वाला मत बोलना, वो सब बोलेंगे, उसके बियॉन्ड सोचना. बताओ. सस्टेनेबिलिटी तो वही हो गया ना यार। लेबर मार्केट कैसे, सोशल जस्टिस कैसे, इंटरजेनरेशनल, नेक्स्ट जनरेशन को इंपैक्ट करना चाहिए। चलो एक बात मैं मान लेता हूं आपकी, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर। ठीक है, और नहीं, है स्कूल करिकुलम तो लाइफ में, जब एआई आ गया है दुनिया में, लाइफ में कभी किसी का स्कूल करिकुलम अप टू डेट नहीं हो पाएगा अब। Debt sustainability, very good. If you leave your next generation with fiscal debt at 15% or let's say 100% of GDP, what are they going to do? एक चीज और सोच लो बस, एक्चुअली दो चीजें और सोच लो। एनर्जी, आवर एनर्जी ट्रांजिशन हम करेंगे अगर एनर्जी ट्रांजिशन, and we transition to a green energy lifestyle, if we execute the green transition, only then this will happen. अब एक और पॉइंट सोच लो इंटरजेनरेशनल इक्विटी में, वाटर तो एनवायरमेंट है, एनवायरमेंट की तो कितना भी लिख लो, वाटर, लैंड, हर तरह से लिख लो एनवायरमेंट को, उसमें दिक्कत नहीं है, फॉरेस्ट कंजर्वेशन, एनवायरमेंट का पॉइंट नहीं चाहिए मुझे। रिसोर्सेज भी वही हो गए ना यार। Abhinav, explain what you are writing. It's exactly what I wanted to hear. अभिनव शेखर, थोड़ा सा और एक्सप्लेन करके लिखो। आई थिंक आपको आ गया समझ में क्या चाह रहा हूँ, क्या चाह रहा हूँ। अरे इंटरजेनरेशनल, ग्लोबल नॉर्थ तो हमारी जनरेशन में बैठे हैं, इंटरजेनरेशनल आगे की जनरेशन। अरे स्मार्ट लोगों, ये तुम हो, ये नेक्स्ट जनरेशन है, इसके ऊपर वाली भी कोई जनरेशन को रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज है हमारी या नहीं, या वो भूल चुके हैं हम? सारे इस जनरेशन की बात कर रहे हैं। व्हाट अबाउट देम? Our development should also focus on geriatric healthcare, digital inclusion, है ना? उन वो भी तो ऊपर वाली जनरेशन है, वो तो जिंदा है, ये तो आए नहीं अभी, राइट? सो स्टार्ट थिंकिंग ब्रॉड। अभी तक भी कोई नई इंफॉर्मेशन डिलीवर नहीं हुई है आपको, थोड़ी बहुत नई इंफॉर्मेशन डिलीवर हुई है, राइट? बट यू नीड टू ओपन योर माइंड। ऐसे जो ब्रॉड टॉपिक्स होते हैं उसमें दिमाग चलाना इज मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट। और मैं यहां पे क्या करवा रहा हूं आपसे, आई एम जस्ट टीचिंग यू हाउ टू थिंक टिल नाउ। नया भी पढ़ाऊंगा आपको कुछ, बट जब ये हो जाएगा। सो एनवायरमेंटल सस्टेनेबिलिटी, इकोनॉमिक पॉलिसीज एंड डेट। अब आपने डेट सस्टेनेबिलिटी लिखा, अगर मुझे लिखना होता है एग्जाम में तो मैं लिखता फिस्कल प्रूडेंस, ग्रीन ट्रांजिशन, net zero commitments. Use these keywords, drop these keywords in your answers, you makes you look educated and you will also feel educated. Intragenerational तो हम देख ही चुके हैं, we have seen the components already. आगे चलते हैं। अब शुरू होगी थोड़ी सी मेंटोस जिंदगी। अब एक काम करते हैं, पहले let me show you something before I teach you this. This is last 30 minutes for today जो मैं आपको अब पढ़ाने वाला हूं। बट एक चीज मैं आपको दिखाता हूं। एक तो इसमें कुछ केस स्टडीज हैं नीति आयोग की, और कुछ केस स्टडीज हैं वर्ल्ड इकोनॉमिक फोरम की, ग्लोबल केस स्टडीज, वो आप पढ़ोगे और उनको कोट करोगे, राइट? अब लेट अस लुक एट समथिंग अगेन। उल्टा शुरू करते हैं। इस क्वेश्चन को जाने दो क्योंकि ये मेरे को अभी पढ़ाना है आपको। 7 देखो, explain intra-generational and intergenerational issues of equity from the perspective of inclusive growth and sustainable development. अब लिख लोगे? अब कोई इशू किसी को ये लिखने में? यस मुस्कान, देयर इज नॉट इवन वन वर्ड इन द स्लाइड्स जो यहां पर ना लिखा हो. It is argued that strategy for inclusive development is intended to meet the objectives of inclusiveness and sustainability together. Comment on this statement. लिख लोगे अब? ये एक्चुअली मैं कभी नेगेटिव में क्वेश्चन पूछ लेता हूँ, कभी पॉजिटिव में पूछ लेता हूँ, तो रिस्पॉन्स खराब हो जाता है. द क्वेश्चन इज, विल यू बी एबल टू राइट नाउ what are the salient features of inclusive growth? Has India been experiencing such a growth process? Analyze and suggest measures for inclusive growth. Any problem? नहीं, फिर देखो नेगेटिव पूछ लिया. Will you be able to write? Sorry, my bad. I have a bad habit. Will you be able to write these questions now? अच्छा, अब बताओ. Till now, have I taught you anything new? Broadly speaking. Broadly speaking, I have not taught you anything new. It is merely the brilliance of information management. That I know how to think and I have the information. मैंने कुछ नहीं पढ़ाया आपको नया. आपको सारी स्कीम्स भी आती थी, आपको सारे मेजर्स भी आते थे, आपको स्कीम्स मेरे से ज्यादा याद थी एक्चुअली, तो अगर क्यूमुलेटिवली देखें, राइट. बट अब अभी से 1 घंटा पहले, 1 डेढ़ घंटा पहले, एग्जैक्टली 1.5 आवर बिफोर दिस वी स्टार्टेड, तब हमें लग रहा था ये नहीं हो सकता, और अब लग रहा है हो जाएगा. अब चलते हैं मेंटोर जिंदगी में. मेंटोर जिंदगी क्या है कि ये क्वेश्चन जब आए, see whatever you have done till now is anything that any serious means giving aspirant does. Serious means giving aspirant, not serious aspirant. This is what anyone does for every subject, who people who are actually in the fighting for means. ठीक है, जिनका एक्चुअली मेंस होने का चांस है, वो इतना काम सब कर रहे हैं, right? So you ask a serious means appearing candidate, he will be able to give you generalistic points on all these questions. But till now, if you notice, we have not written any specific value addition point. Nothing is beautiful in the sense of making sense के दिमाग देख के लग रहा है कि अरे क्या बात बोल दी, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है अभी तक. It is only data and government schemes that we have added, right? तो इतना तो मेंस की कंपटीशन में आने के लिए हमें करना है. The next step is to get ahead of all those people, and let me do that with you now. अब आते हैं the most important step, when we go one step ahead of everyone who would otherwise be writing means. ये कोई नहीं कर रहा means में जो मैं आपको अब करवाने वाला हूं, unless उनका इकोनॉमिक्स ऑप्शनल हो. अब what is the भारतीय मॉडल फॉर इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ, इस बारे में बात करते हैं. So Niti Aayog has come up with a policy paper, and they say that the Bharatiya model of inclusive growth has 5 essential components. ठीक है, और आप ध्यान से सुनेंगे. It is inspired from our cultural roots. ठीक है, we are focusing on sustained, fast and inclusive growth. ये तो है इंस्पिरेशन from our cultural roots. कैसे inspired from cultural roots हम अभी देखेंगे. And sustained, fast and inclusive growth we are going to do. It has 3 pillars. One is Indic market economics, meaning India-based market economics that India applies through its own policy. Then Antyodaya and empowerment. Lastly, holistic and pragmatic approach. ठीक है, ये 3 चीजें बोली हैं. These are the 3 main pillars of the भारतीय मॉडल ऑफ इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ. एंड जो मैं अगली कुछ बातें आपको बोलने वाला हूं, इससे इकोनॉमी के बाकी सेक्शंस के क्वेश्चंस में भी यू आर गोइंग टू गेट अ लॉट ऑफ फॉडर. प्लीज ध्यान से सुनना, लिखना है लिख लो. आई विल गो एज स्लो एज आई कैन. आई विल एक्सप्लेन एवरी पॉइंट. एवरीथिंग इज रिटन इन द पीडीएफ that has been given to you, but please listen to it carefully. You are going to learn some new things, and this will be helpful everywhere in economics. ठीक है, चलो. What is the concept of Indic market economics? पहले ये बात करते हैं. means India's idea of marketplace macroeconomic management. India says today there are three stakeholders. One is the private sector, one is the government sector, and the third sector is the private social sector. The private social sector being the NGOs and the NPOs. So what are the key roles of each of these sectors? Government says, or India's model says, that the private sector's main job is employment creation, business development, unencumbered growth, so that it can lead to economic prosperity. ठीक है? The job of the government here, government का क्या काम है? The job of the government here is to withdraw from business. Government has no business being in business. Minimum government, maximum governance. No government in business. So what do we see happening around us? Privatization, strategic disinvestment. Government will only stay in strategic sectors. Earlier, government is making watches, government is making scooters, government is making petrochemicals. Now government says withdrawal. Let the private sector grow. Our job is to be the most efficient regulator of the private sector. So now you will see in India focus on regulatory bodies, SEBI, RBI, IRDAI, RERA, PFRDA. Regulation of the private sector is our job. So we are the ones who are going to regulate the private sector. Let the private sector be the one that grows. And the private social sector, the idea of NGOs and NPOs, these are people who can supplant the government approach. Where the government cannot reach, NGOs can reach, civil society can reach. So there are three sectors in the Indic market economics model where private sector has some role, government sector has some role, and private social sector has some role. Right? This is our model of development. Now, what is this model? On one side, we have the command and control economies of countries like USSR, which are communist, that say all production, you seize the means of production, all production must be done by the state. Right? On the other side, we have the ultra capitalist economies, that where everything is a market phenomena, and like we remembered in Lifestyle for Environment, they are market societies. Even their society decisions are becoming market induced. Right in the middle lies the middle path of Buddhism, where India has adopted a flexible approach, where we use this middle path approach to be getting the best of both worlds. And this is the philosophical underpinning of the Indic market model, where we are between the communist economies of the left, the ultra capitalist economies of the right. We are damn straight in the center, focusing on the middle path of Buddhism. Then the private sector focuses on growth and employment. अभी I am not done. अभी तो शुरू हुई है बात. अभी शांति. Private sector focuses on growth and employment. Private social initiatives will supplement the government where government cannot reach. Government has no business being in business, because if government comes to business, what does it lead to? If government comes to business, it is risk averse. It will never take risk. It is innovation averse. So let private sector drive this. let government play the role of regulator. What are the advantages of this approach? It is flexible, gives government the time to address market failures, to deal with other externalities. Now, government is not focusing on making watches, making scooters. Then what does it mean? Government gets freed up. So government gets freed up. That means government now focuses on areas that the private sector will not focus on. And to give this example, let me talk of a wonderful example of infrastructure. इसलिए मैं कह रहा था कि ये चीज आपको बाकी जगह में काम आएगी. This model of Indic market economics leads to unbundling of the infrastructure sector. How? It says there are three types of infrastructures. One is things like mobile towers. These are ones that the private sector is willing to make because there is a return on it and the cost is not too high. So let the private sector make this. Government now gets freed up. So government says two more types of infrastructure remain. One is a toll plaza. Toll plaza is built over an expressway. Why is private sector not very keen to build toll plaza, or rather to build the expressway? Because the private sector feels that what if we spend so much money building this expressway, and because of policy uncertainty, because of the idea of expressway is not functioning properly, or they don't get the traffic, they spend 300 crores on it and they don't get the return, right? So they have the money. Money is not the problem. They have the money. They have the problem of investment return guarantee. How do you guarantee that they are going to get return on their investment? So here the government says, let's have a public-private partnership. And there is the third kind of infrastructure, which is pure public goods. Things like rural roads. Now, rural roads are things that private sector will never build, but they have a huge multiplier effect on the economy, right? Here the government will focus. So now that certain responsibilities have gone to the private sector, it frees up the government to focus on core issues of public good creation as far as infrastructure goes. Now, government's job is merely as an enabler. So to enable, what does the government do? One, it focuses on innovation. It wants people to do and learn innovation so that it helps in private sector growth. So Atal Innovation Mission, Manak, Inspire Award, Atal Tinkering Lab is the policy of this government. Then, second, the government focuses on skilling. So National Career Service, vocational training, the idea of academic banks of credit, new education policy. Again, government is enabling the private sector to grow. And thirdly, government creates digital public infrastructure, again enabling the private sector to grow in various areas. So the first pillar of the Bhartiya model of inclusive development talks about differential roles for private sector, social initiatives, and government. Government has no business being in business. MG2 stands for minimum government, maximum governance. The slogan that our Honorable Prime Minister has given. The advantage is this is a flexible approach. It can address market failures. It can address externalities. Then government gets freed up, and government focuses on infrastructure, focuses on public goods, skilling, focuses on innovation. Then we adopt the middle path of between the ultra capitalist economies and the communist command and control approach, in line with our philosophical underpinning of Buddhism. This is the first pillar of government model of inclusive growth or Bharatiya model of inclusive development. And why am I specifying the word Bharatiya? Because it is coming from our own cultural roots, and this will become clear further in the next pillar. Second, this is market management, that macroeconomic management is happening at the best level. The second idea is Antyodaya and empowerment. So the philosophy behind it is that the last person in the line, benefit for all, integral humanism, is the philosophy of Deendayal Upadhyaya ji. That Antyodaya, benefit of all, the person who is the last person in the line must get benefits. So Gandhiji's talisman. What is the approach? Approach earlier was only of basic needs. Now it is all stakeholders getting involved, equal opportunity to all, empowerment of all. What has happened? What has happened is that prioritization has changed. Earlier, the priority was midday meal. Now the priority is portion. So we are growing and making our idea of empowerment more and more inclusive and broad in terms of covering all sectors, right? So we are focusing on a saturation approach. I have used this word before with you. Layered government schemes and trying to saturate people with them so that everyone who is an Indian citizen gets the benefit of these government schemes, right? We are focusing on things like Ujjwala Yojana, Jan Dhan Yojana, Swachh Bharat Mission, Ayushman Bharat, and we are seeing that multidimensional poverty is declining. And lastly, the focus is on outputs, but more than that on outcomes. If I have given input of rupees 100, I don't care about that output is rupees 120. If I had given rupees 100 to healthcare, I care about the outcome, and the outcome being that infant mortality rate is reduced. Okay. Now in this pillar, I want to show you a comprehensive list of government schemes that I have written down for you, and you can remember any few of them that you want. Whichever ones you want, you can remember. In this pillar, I have made a comprehensive list for you. So here also it is tied in our philosophical underpinning of Antyodaya, our philosophical underpinning of integral humanism. Then look at these government schemes: Jan Dhan, PM Saubhagya, Bharat Lamp, Gram Jyoti Yojana, Saubhagya, Unnat Jyoti, Pradhan Mantri Awas, Swachh Bharat Mission, Jal Jeevan Mission, Rashtriya Gram Swaraj Abhiyan, Sansad Adarsh Gram Yojana, Jan Vikas Karyakram, Jan Arogya Yojana, Ujjwala Yojana, Jam Trinity, Deen Dayal Upadhyaya Antyodaya Yojana, Mudra Yojana. All of these schemes are for empowerment of the last person in the road. You can remember any of these. Saturation approach means that if there is a government scheme, saturation means that my focus is, when is it called a saturated solution? When no more water, no more salt can be dissolved in the water, it is called saturated solution. मैं sugar लूं, water में डालूं, I keep dissolving it. It will come a point when no more sugar is dissolved. At that time, I will call it as a saturated solution. Saturation of a government scheme is that 100% of the beneficiaries are getting the benefits. So if I have launched Ayushman Bharat and I have sent people in the village to govern and to check whether Ayushman Bharat is working, my first idea would be all beneficiaries must get the benefits. Now, what is the last pillar? The last pillar of holistic approach towards inclusive development. Holistic, and you should write here the word pragmatic approach. What do we say? We say that we have a philosophy of Vasudev Kutumbakam, that the world is one family. Then we have a philosophy of logic, of intuition, of empiricism. If you look at India's philosophical growth, logic has been something that we have focused on since times immemorial. We spoke of Anu at the time of ancient India, which the Greeks discovered later. So this idea of philosophical underpinnings governing our Bharatiya model of inclusive development. For example, when we talk of the green economy, we focused on India's philosophy of not eating meat because it leads to greenhouse gas emissions, of living in joint families because it led to better housing and more sustainable development. So we are open to all theories. Holistically, we look at all theories of development. We are open to any inputs that we get. We are open to all theories of development, but we are rooted in our own reality. We will not deviate from our own reality. So if you look at the idea of inflation targeting, India has used its own approach based on our own realities, our own social and cultural phenomena. And we have, in the times of COVID, managed the problem of inflation. India has used its own approach. And in the time of wars, where there is a global economic slowdown and there is the funding all across the world is drying up, India's investment potential is huge. When it comes to trade and industrial policy, India says that if a country pretends to be a developing country, but is actually developed, we will have trade protections against it, specifically the country of China. But that doesn't mean that we will not have free trade agreements with Europe, with UAE, with Australia, which are all developed nations. So holistic and pragmatic in our own cultural reality is our method of inclusive development, the Bharatiya model of inclusive development. Now, what is the way ahead to ensure that this model creates a competitive market economy? So we have to focus on digital systems enhancing economic growth. When we are talking about using of artificial intelligence, it must be to enhance the skills of people. We must have AI that actually enhances people's skills. So low skilled people can become middle skilled people can become high skilled people, and high skilled people can become very high skilled people. There needs to be universal digital connectivity and 100% saturation of the digital world. Therefore, it is only then, once we obtain universal digital connectivity, that we will have the true benefits of our idea of inclusive development through digital public infrastructure. The social and occupational barriers need to be broken. We have realized now that work from home is something that can work. Therefore, people who are specially abled should be treated at par. Caste discrimination, gender discrimination has no place in India going forward in the Bharatiya model of inclusive development. Then, as far as education and health are concerned, we need hybrid models. Hybrid being online and offline combined to get to bridge the quality divide that we are facing in terms of education and healthcare. Similar divide we are facing with regards to old age, with regards to digital divide, which needs to be addressed. We need a level playing field for all corporates, whether it be an MSME, whether it be a big corporate house, or be it a single person company. For all of these, we need a level playing field. And how will we achieve that? Through comprehensive policy reform, through a tax system which is equitable, automated, and efficient. And lastly, looking at our potential of our demographic dividend, where our average age is merely 29 and that of Europe and America is more than 42, we can become the global skill supplier of the world, and therefore in our G20 presidency the idea of global skills mapping had a very high priority, right? This is the way ahead in terms of the Bharatiya model of inclusive development. So if I have to sum up the Bharatiya model of inclusive development, it is a model that focuses on Indic market economics. It is a model that focuses on Antyodaya and empowerment. And it is a model which focuses on the idea of India becoming it. Sorry, I'm blanking a little bit because chat में कोई ना कोई कुछ ना कुछ लिखता रहता है, right? India having a holistic and pragmatic approach and finally leading to a competitive economy through this model. Okay, this is the Bharatiya model of inclusive development, and now you should have at least 20 points that will help you do value addition in terms of inclusive growth. Now I'm done. Now you can talk in the chat. लग रहा है थोड़ा बढ़िया, कुछ समझ आया? विवेक यार बोर्ड पे लिखा था यूनिवर्सल डिजिटल कनेक्टिविटी यार, कम ऑन. अब आपको आता है, आप कुछ नया पढ़ा दिया मैंने आपको. एक्चुअली इंफॉर्मेशन मैनेजमेंट और नई चीजें पढ़ने में हमें डिफरेंस समझ आना चाहिए. दिस इज लर्निंग न्यू थिंग्स, दैट वाज इंफॉर्मेशन मैनेजमेंट. ये हमने एक्चुअली कोई नए पॉइंट सीखे हैं. पहले में आप देखो, नाउ इफ आई वुड हैव टॉट यू दिस इन द बिगिनिंग तो आपको मजा ही नहीं आता, बिकॉज आप अपना दिमाग नहीं लगाते, फिर आप यही पॉइंट्स रिसाइकल करते है ना. बट अब यू हैव ऑल्सो ब्रेनस्टॉर्म्ड, एंड अब एक बार वापस चल लेते हैं जो मुझे आपको फाइनली दिखाना था कि अब अगर हमें ये वाला क्वेश्चन लिखना हो कि इज इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ पॉसिबल अंडर मार्केट इकोनॉमिक्स. Now, inclusive growth under market economics. Now, I want you to write answers like nobody else will. अब दिक्कत नहीं आनी चाहिए आपको ये आंसर लिखने में. अब आप इसमें ऐसे कीवर्ड्स ड्रॉप करो. ठीक है, फिर अब से पेन रिटर्न नहीं कर लेंगे स्लाइड्स. ठीक है, अब एक चीज और देख लो बस जाने से पहले कि इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ के क्वेश्चंस का कंक्लूजन कैसे लिखना होता है. इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ मींस, actually inclusive and sustainable growth means inclusion of all, SDG 10, nutrition and food security, focus on SDG 2, caring for health, SDG 3, learning opportunities, SDG 4, uplifting women, SDG 5, sustainable economic growth, SDG 8, inequality reduction, SDG 10, viable urban development, SDG 11, and equitable justice and strong institutions, SDG 16. So inclusive growth is inclusive of all. Thank you very much for your patient listening. I hope you enjoyed today's lecture. एक बार जाके डॉक्यूमेंट प्लीज पढ़ लेना, उससे सब कुछ क्लियर हो जाएगा. उसमें सब कुछ लिखा हुआ है. देयर इज नथिंग which there is. कर लेंगे अभिमन्यु, not a big deal. There is nothing here which is not written in your document. You write the negatives of LPG, Harshit. Then you talk of India also has capitalist market economy. Negatives of LPG, then Indic market economics and Indian model. Thank you. I had fun too. I have been up since 4 a.m. to read these documents of the Niti Aayog. काफी complex थे, but I hope simplified for you now. And I hope अब at least आप inclusive growth लिख लोगे, है ना? चलो, have a good evening. I'll see you now on, what day is it? Is it Tuesday? I think it's Tuesday. Yeah, I will see you now on Thursday. Okay, bye-bye.